Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and welcome back to Who'd Win and Why. The second half of Season 8 has finally started, and today it's Beast Boy going up against Reptil. That's right, it's the two teenage animal shapeshifters from DC and Marvel, and today I'm pitting them up against each other and giving my opinions on who I feel would win in a one-on-one battle to permanent knockout. So, who'd win and why? Let's find out. So first I'm going to talk about Beast Boy. So obviously Beast Boy's primary ability is that he's able to morph himself into any animal that he is aware of or any animal that he can visualize. The process of changing from animal to animal generally is very quick, only taking about less than a second, and he can change from animal to animal extremely rapidly. It also is completely painless for him to change into these animals, and he can hold any animal form for as long as he wants to. And it's also worth noting that every animal that he changes into is green, just like his own skin color. And Beast Boy, he obviously gains the physical capabilities of whatever animal he changes into, meaning that if he wants to get some extra strength, he'll change into a gorilla, and if he wants some extra speed, he'll change into a cheetah. If he wants some extra size or some extra toughness or durability, then he'll change into a Tyrannosaurus Rex, because Beast Boy can not only change into every animal that is on the planet currently, but he can also change into any animal that was prehistoric, such as dinosaurs, woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And he can also change into animals from other planets, essentially alien animals. However, it is worth knowing that any animal he changes into, Beast Boy has to be aware of. He doesn't just gain an all-access pass to any animal that has ever existed on any planet. No, he needs to know what the animal is and know what it looks like in order to be able to change himself into it. But I'm pretty sure that's pretty self-explanatory. Beast Boy also seems to have some control over the abilities that he gets after he changes into an animal. And what I mean by that is that in certain animal forms, such as a gorilla form or a rhino form, it may actually be more tough and more strong than an actual gorilla or an actual rhino. So he's essentially a super gorilla or a super rhino, which is pretty cool. He also seems to be able to express some control over the size of the animals that he changes into. In fact, once I think he even changed into a tarantula that was the size of a person, and we know how tiny tarantulas are in comparison to people, so that's really impressive. Now, I don't think he has complete control over this ability. I don't think he can change to a lion that's the size of a planet, but the point is he does have some control over the size of whatever animal he changes into, and that's pretty impressive if you ask me. Beast Boy has also been able to show to transform into multiple organisms at some times, but this is very limited. Generally, he can really only do this when he's turning into multiple tiny animals that generally travel in groups, such as a swarm of bees. In other words, he can't change into a group of lions or a pack of wolves. It would be cool if he could, but that's just not in his power set. Beast Boy also has an ability called animal mimicry, meaning that when he changes into an animal, it's much easier for him to adopt the personality, characteristics, and thinking of whatever animal he changes into. Essentially meaning that he's not just a guy that can change into a cheetah, he's a guy that can change into a cheetah and act like a cheetah, think like a cheetah, use the cheetah's abilities to the best of his ability. And that's obviously really good, for him, because that means any animal that he changes into, he'll be able to use to the best of his ability, and that's impressive and just something really good to have. Beast Boy can also change into animals that are completely made up, and this works in two ways. One way is that he can change into animals that are from mythology or fiction, such as a phoenix or a dragon or a chupacabra or a werewolf, stuff like that. Any animal that's from fiction that he's aware of. And the second way is that he can change into animals that he's created by himself, up in his own head. See, Beast Boy's powers work more visually than saying, oh, that's an animal, therefore I can transform into it. Meaning that if he has a sharp mental image of whatever animal he's trying to change into, he can change into that animal, whether it's made up or not. So yeah, that has led him to do some impressive things over the years. Just being able to create your own animal, that can lead to some pretty impressive things. Beast Boy also has a super form, if you want to call it that, a super form called the hybrid, which is essentially all the powers of every animal that he can change into, all wrapped up into one. Yeah, literally, he can do this. However, he cannot control this form, and thus will only use it as a last resort, only if it's absolutely necessary. However, it is an extremely powerful form, and it can allow Beast Boy to get out of danger if he finds himself in too much danger. However, Beast Boy does not rely only on his shape-shifting abilities. He also has the ability to heal from all different types of wounds. Now, this doesn't allow him to be able to regrow his arm or his head or anything. He doesn't have the healing factor up to someone like Deadpool or anything like that, but his healing factor has been compared to Deathstroke before, and we know how good Deathstroke is at repairing damage. So that's a pretty wicked healing factor if you ask me. Beast Boy also has some knowledge of multiple martial arts. He's not a master martial martial artist. He hasn't been a master of any of the martial arts that he's learned, but it does prove that he is not defenseless in his regular form. He is pretty good in terms of hand-to-hand combat. Not the best, but also not defenseless. And while he generally does work with a superhero team, whether it's, the Ravagers or the Teen Titans or his first team, the Doom Patrol, he's done some pretty impressive things. Like, he's been able to go up against extremely tough fighters such as Deathstroke and even demons like Trigon, and also multiple armies before. But like I said, it is worth noting that he is just, generally he's with a team. He rarely ever does anything all too impressive all by himself, and he's generally with a team for most of the time, but still, the things that he is doing are still very impressive. Now let's talk about Beast Boy's weaknesses. So in terms of his weaknesses, obviously his strength, speed, and durability can be, immensely increased depending on what animal he changes into, but when it comes to his regular form, he just has the physical capabilities of a regular person, or at least around the physical capabilities of a regular person. And he can be shocked back to this form if he takes too much damage while in an animal form. It's also worth knowing that Beast Boy is not the smartest fighter. Now, this does not mean he's an idiot. I know that in the Teen Titans show, he has been portrayed to be somewhat of an idiot. However, in the comics, he is not that much of an idiot. He's actually very serious about his role. However, he is also not the best strategist. He basically just has average level intelligence, and he can get pretty cocky on the battlefield and tell a lot of jokes. And depending on who he's fighting, that can lead to his downfall. However, Beast Boy is still an opponent that should not be underestimated. His ability to transform into so many different organisms give him a versatility advantage, or a versatility level, I guess I should say, that is almost unmatched. And I'm definitely not going to be wanting to go up in a 1-on-1 battle to the death up against a character that is essentially a one-man animal kingdom and beyond. Alright, so now let's talk about Reptil. So the way that Reptil originally got his powers is that he was with his parents on an archaeological dig, and his parents discovered a fossilized amulet. And when Reptil touched the amulet, he realized that it gave him incredible powers that had to do with dinosaurs. Now, originally, Reptil could only change parts of his body into dinosaur parts, meaning that he could get only like the wings of a pterodactyl or the legs of a raptor. Or the head of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, something like that. And he wasn't able to do like a head of a Tyrannosaurus Rex and wings of a pterodactyl. He was only able to do like one form at a time, and he wasn't able to transform into full dinosaurs. Yet. Later on, Reptil learned that not only could he change into full dinosaurs and any dinosaur that ever existed, but also any prehistoric animal, which includes prehistoric insects, prehistoric birds, and other animals such as woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, and the list goes on and on. So when some people think of Reptil, they generally just think, oh, he's the guy that can transform into dinosaurs. Yes, but he can do much more than that. He actually has more versatility than a lot of people think. So even though he did learn how to change into any prehistoric animal he wanted to, there was one tiny problem. His features definitely changed into the animal that he wanted to, but not the size. The size stayed the same, meaning that he could change his full body into a Tyrannosaurus Rex's body, but it would be the same size as Reptil himself. And the same goes for tiny animals like insects. Again, the same size as Reptil himself, which I'm sure would be pretty creepy. However, later his powers were augmented by Pym particles, and now he's actually able to transform into any prehistoric animal he wants, accompanied by the right size. Which, I mean, is pretty cool. Like, why wouldn't you transform into the ginormous Tyrannosaurus Rex that it's supposed to be if you could? Why wouldn't you? So yeah, that's basically what his powers are like. He's able to transform into any prehistoric animal ever. He obviously retains his regular intelligence. I believe he also retains the ability to speak. I'm not 100% sure about that, though, but he retains his regular intelligence. And obviously he gets the physical capabilities of whatever animal he changes into, meaning that if he changes into a ginormous Tyrannosaurus Rex, he'll gain a huge amount of strength and durability, and if he changes into a pterodactyl or something like that, then he'll gain a lot of speed and maneuverability. So that's pretty cool. However, the shapeshifting abilities is not the only ability that the fossilized amulet gives him. It also gives Reptil the ability to heal from all different types of wounds, like including burns, electrocutions, stuff like that. He can heal from a lot of stuff. Now, it doesn't mean he has regenerative abilities. He's definitely not immortal or anything like that, but it does allow him to keep fighting for much longer than a regular person should be able to, especially when you factor in the enemies that he's going up against. And Reptil also spent a lot of time in the Avengers Academy, which, if any of you don't know, I believe is basically just an academy for young supers and trying to mold them into real heroes. Kind of. Basically, the main reason why it was created was because people were afraid that these guys were going to turn to villainy. In fact, one of the students himself, Stryker, one of the students at the Avengers Academy, put it very nicely, or maybe not nicely, but pretty accurately. He said, and I quote, "We're not here because they think we have what it takes to be the next Captain America. We're here because they're worried we'll be the next Red Skull." So that kind of, end quote, and that kind of explains, what they're really doing there. However, Reptil did learn how to properly defend himself, to work as a part of a team, and to become a real hero. So while Reptil is a relatively young hero and a relatively new hero in comics, that doesn't mean he's a bad hero, because he can still do a lot of cool things. Now in terms of Reptil's weaknesses. So while Reptil can drastically increase his strength, speed, and durability depending on what animal he changes into, and in terms of his regular body, he basically just has the strength, speed, and durability of a regular person, and he can be changed back to this form if he takes too much damage. It's also worth noting that Reptil's abilities are completely dependent on if he has the fossilized amulet or not. It's what powers him. It's what gives him his powers. Originally, he wore this amulet around his neck, but generally now he just has it embedded into his chest. But this does mean that if someone knows what it can do, and if they get a good opening, they can take it out, and that goes all of Reptil's abilities, including the healing and the shapeshifting. He's basically powerless. However, an opponent would need a good opening in order to be able to do that, so it shouldn't cause him too much trouble. And overall, Reptil does have a pretty good versatility level. He can change into any animal from the prehistoric times, and there's a lot of animals, more animals than a lot of people think. He's definitely not a character that I want to fight in a one-on-one battle to the death, because when you mix dinosaurs with healing, it's game over. Alright, so now that I've talked about both of these characters, it's time for me to decide who I feel would win in a fight between these two characters. Now, this fight is actually very interesting, because in terms of strength, speed, and durability, it's very hard to compare with these two, because the strength, speed, and durability of these two characters is, it's completely dependent on whatever animal they change into, and they can change their stats basically whenever they want. For example, if Reptil changes from a Tyrannosaurus Rex to a Pterodactyl, he's just lost a ton of strength and durability, but gains a lot of speed and maneuverability. And on the flip side, if Beast Boy changes from a cheetah to a gorilla, then he's lost a lot of speed, but now gains a lot of strength and durability. So their stats physically can change all the time. It's constantly changing, and it's completely dependent on whatever animal they're changing into. And when you look at their base forms, well, they just have the strength, speed, and durability of a regular person, roughly. So basically, in order to judge this fight and to judge who would win, you need to look at the categories that are not dependent on whatever animal they change into. And those would be categories like stamina, intelligence, fighting ability, experience, and most importantly in this case, versatility. And when you look at these categories, there are actually a couple of categories that these two are pretty even on. For example, stamina. Both of these characters have roughly the same healing factor. And while one person might be able to do enough research and find out, oh, actually this person has the better healing factor because of this one thing that it did. Fundamentally, these healing factors are supposed to be able to heal these characters from all types of wounds, but they're not allowed to regenerate any sort of limb lost or head lost, anything like that. Neither of them are immortal. So fundamentally, these two have the same healing factor, so I would put them about even in terms of stamina and healing. Also in terms of intelligence, I would say that they're about even in terms of intelligence. They both have average intelligence for their ages, and neither of them strategize that well in the middle of battle. One might say that Reptil should win this advantage simply because Beast Boy likes to crack a lot of jokes on the battlefield, and we can get cocky, which could throw him off guard. However, I don't really think this would affect his intelligence on the battlefield, and even if it would, I don't think it would affect it enough for Reptil to have a significant advantage here. I don't think it would be anything of a game changer, because let's be honest, in a battle to the death, both of them are going to be thinking the same thing. I'm going to use whatever I have to kill each other, to kill the other, yeah, and neither of them strategize all too much. So I would say they're roughly the same in terms of intelligence as well. However, when you look at the three other categories that I mentioned, which is fighting ability, experience, and versatility, I definitely have to give this win to Beast Boy, and here's why. So first, let's talk about fighting ability. Beast Boy is much better trained in terms of martial arts combat than Reptil is. Yes, Reptil did have some training from the Avengers Academy, Academy, but this was more so training to be molded into a better hero, not specifically martial arts. And while he did learn how to properly defend himself and did probably, do practice combat with some of his fellow students and with mentors, stuff like that, again, he wasn't trained specifically in multiple martial arts or anything like that. He was more so just trained how to use his abilities well. And when we look at Beast Boy, he was formally trained in multiple martial arts. Again, he's not a master of any of them, but he's not defenseless in his regular form. Far from it. Meaning that if we put these two characters in their regular form, I already think Beast Boy has the advantage, simply because he would outclass Reptil completely in terms of hand-to-hand combat, unarmed combat. So I would definitely be giving Beast Boy the advantage in fighting ability. Also, when it comes to experience, I have to give Beast Boy the advantage there. First of all, yes, Beast Boy does spend a lot of his time with teams, and he doesn't do a lot of impressive stuff by himself, at least not a lot of it. Generally, the more impressive thing that he's doing are with the aid of other heroes. However, it's worth knowing that Reptil doesn't work by himself that much either. Reptil, for a big chunk of his career, was with the Avengers Academy, and he was fighting with 5 other members. I don't think I can really name all of them right now, but the point is there were 6 members or 6 students at the Avengers Academy at the time, and he was fighting with them and didn't do a lot by himself. And if he was doing anything by himself, it wasn't anything too impressive. And while the same thing could be said about Beast Boy, at least Beast Boy has been around in comics much, much longer than Reptil has, which overall just gives him better, what's the word? It allows him to do more impressive things. He's had the time to do more impressive things than Reptil has. And overall, I do feel that Beast Boy has done more impressive things simply because he's just been around that much longer than Reptil has. So I would definitely give the experience advantage to Beast Boy. And this is the one I'm sure you've all been waiting for, the one that's pretty obvious. Beast Boy definitely has the advantage in versatility. There is only one thing that Reptil can do that Beast Boy cannot do, and that is transform parts of his body into dinosaur parts. And while that is pretty cool, like, I'd like to have pterodactyl wings while still keeping my regular body, instead of changing into a full pterodactyl, it doesn't make up for the versatility that Beast Boy has, because his versatility is insane. He can transform into basically any animal from the animal kingdom, and, really just with the exceptions of the animals that he's not aware of. So any animal that he's aware of, he can change into. And also animals from prehistoric times, which is literally everything that Reptil is, and more, because he can change into, animals from other planets, and made-up animals, whether they're made up in his head or from fiction. The versatility gap here is just crazy. And you also have to factor in that Beast Boy seems to have more control over what he can do. He seems to be able to actually become a stronger gorilla than what a gorilla actually is. He can change the size of whatever animal he's in. He can become a tarantula that's the size of a regular person. He has his animal mimicry, which allows him to use the animal's abilities to the best of his ability. And he can transform into multiple organisms, albeit, under, very tiny circumstances. And Reptil can barely do any of that, if any of that at all. Beast Boy has just better control over what he can do, and his versatility level is just far better than Reptil's. And sure, there might be one or two, or maybe a lot, of prehistoric animals that Beast Boy is not aware of, and you could say that is kind of something Reptil has over Beast Boy. That's very fair. However, as soon as Reptil uses this ability, it's not really an advantage anymore, because like I said, Beast Boy's powers work visually, meaning that as soon as he sees a new animal, he can transform into it. If he sees the name of an animal, but not really what the animal looks like, he wouldn't be able to transform into it, because it's how his mind works. He needs to have a visual picture, and then he can transform into it. Meaning that as soon as Reptil transforms into an animal that he's not aware of, then Beast Boy can just copy him. He could transform into that animal too. So basically, that advantage that Reptil has would be nullified as soon as Reptil tries to act on that advantage. So yeah, it's basically not really an advantage at all. And while this is very unlikely to happen, if one character is going to lose their abilities at one point during the fight, it's going to be Reptil, because Reptil's powers are completely linked to the fossilized amulet. Now, this is very, very, very unlikely to happen, because first of all, Beast Boy would probably need to put together that amulet is what gives him his abilities, and Beast Boy would need a good opening in order to be able to take that amulet out. But it is still a possibility, and definitely, Beast Boy's not going to be losing his abilities, he just has them, whereas Reptil, his abilities are completely dependent on a fossilized amulet. So overall, both of these characters are very similar in the sense that they're both teenagers, or they're both very young, and they can both shape change into a ton of different animals. But when you really look at what these characters are supposed to be able to do, Sorry, when you really look at what these characters are supposed to be able to do, you can tell that one just has a huge advantage over the other. One character is supposed to be able to transform into any animal from the animal kingdom and beyond. Prehistoric animals, animals from other planets, made-up animals. Any animal that he is aware of, he can change into. Whereas the other character can only change into prehistoric animals, which is just a fraction of the other character's abilities. Beast Boy just has a wider range of what he can do. He can do much more with his abilities, like with size change and animal mimicry, but he can also just change into much more animals that Reptil can do. Reptil is basically completely outclassed in terms of versatility, and when you mix that with Beast Boy's experience advantage and his fighting ability advantage, I don't see much hope for Reptil in the long run at all. So, in my opinion, the winner is Beast Boy. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video. I know that enjoyed this episode. I know that I did. I really am a fan of both of these characters. If any of you guys are aware of, Beast Boy is my favorite DC character of all time. Although, trust me, bias didn't go into this. I'm sure most of you would probably agree that Beast Boy would win, because that's the general consensus on the internet from what I've seen anyway. But don't worry, no bias went into this. I just personally feel that Beast Boy is just way more versatile, and there's really no advantage that Reptil has over Beast Boy that would make a significant difference. But I did really enjoy this because I'm actually a fan of both of these characters, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video too. If you guys did enjoy this video, please give this video a huge like. I always appreciate the likes. Comment on what you thought of it, what you thought of the video. If anyone out there actually believes that Reptil would win, tell me down in the comments below. I'm not trying to offend you by saying, I think most people would say Beast Boy would win. If you do believe Reptil would win, then tell me in the comments below, because I'd like to know. I'd like to hear the reasoning. And if you could subscribe to my channel, guys, that'd be so great. That would really help my channel out. I try to make these videos as much as I possibly can. With the second half of this season, I'm not 100% sure how the rate of the production of the episodes is actually going to work. I know that in the first half I was able to get them all out, every week. However, this time I'm not sure if it's going to be the same or if it's going to have to be more spread out. Basically, I'm just going to be trying to make these as fast as I possibly can, as I always do. I hope you guys understand. Even if it is a much wider gap, that's what I'm going to do if it means that I can still get these videos out. So, yep, yeah, I don't even know what I'm saying right now. But yeah, so the second half might be a bit more spread out, but if that's what I have to do, then I will do it. But your view is plenty of contribution anyway, so thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And next time on Who'd Win and Why, it's Mega Man X going up against Blue Beetle. See you all then.